Hiya. It's me again, and I've heard that you don't know what class you want to main in Maple. So, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. Do you like monkeys? Do you like hand cannons that can shoot out literal nukes every 30 seconds? Do you love the feeling of seeing all those numbers pop out? But you actually don't do that much damage. But we don't talk about that. And do you love the feeling of interactive gameplay? If you have answered yes to all of these questions, then Cannoneer is the class for you. And I'm going to show you how to play it. This is my guide on how to play Cannoneer. Now, before I get into this one, yet again, I always like to make notes before I get into any of my guides. One thing to note is I'm going to be describing Cannoneer in its current state, so before Destiny, and Cannoneer after the changes that are coming in 2 to 3 months after Destiny, because there are some changes that wildly shift the play style of this class. Right now, it's more of a, DPM, or DPS, damage per minute, just keep your damage up as much as you can kind of class. And in Destiny, it shifts to become more of a burst every 120 seconds kind of class. So I'm going to be listing some of the differences, the new abilities, passives, and anything that is important to note going forward into Destiny, and typically how much more damage you will see after that update comes around. Now, this guide is also going to be more in-depth, so I will be covering specific nodes that you should be focusing on leveling up, endgame farming maps, and, just typically advanced tips and tricks for this class. So if you haven't seen my basic guides on arcane symbols, node stones, and leveling, I suggest that you watch those first before you watch this, because this will have some advanced, I guess you could say, terminology. So just keep that in mind before we get into this one. And remember to like, comment, and sub, or I will literally delete your mesos off the face of the earth faster than Star Forcing does. Thank you. Okay, so when you get blasted off from a cannon and you finally reach Nautilus and get your first job, you will have 5 skills, one of them being entirely useless, so we'll ignore that one. I wish I could just throw it out. So Cannon Blaster is going to be your main mobbing move for your first job. Then you'll have Blast Back, which is a movement option. This is probably one of the best abilities in Cannoneer's entire kit. Then you have Monkey Push, which is your flash jump. Looks like this. And then you have a passive that gives you 20 attack and 250 defense. The defense is not necessarily useful, but the 20 attack is nice. Now, like in my leveling guide, I suggest that you just come level up at Evil Eyes. Scrap Iron Waste is also fine, but you're going to have to wait until the Destiny revamp for that to be very nice. Now, you will also find that Cannon Blaster may not always one-shot, because it only does 1 line of damage. And because you don't have mastery before you hit second job, you can either hit 10 damage or 10,000 damage. So it's kind of inconsistent and very annoying, but it does get better. And once you hit level 30, Cannoneer starts to become more and more reliable, to say the least. Now, you will only have 5 skills pre-Destiny, but after Destiny you will gain 2 more skills. One is Cannon Jump, which is in your 3rd job over here, and it will be moved to 1st job. Now, Cannon Jump is also one of the most useful abilities that Cannoneer has, but I will cover it when I get to 3rd job. And then you'll have another ability that lets you turn on or off your Monkey Companion. Now, if you turn off your Monkey Companion, I don't respect you in anything you do. You are not a Cannoneer main, and you are not accepted here. That's a joke. Do what you like, but it is the personality and the, the life of the class. Now, there's also one more thing that I should note. You can use Cannon Blaster when jumping, and in your first job, Cannon Blaster is going to be very slow. Right now it looks fine because I do have all of the attack speed buffs that make this ability look fairly normal, to say the least. Realistically, it can only hit one platform and a decent bit of what's in front of you, but yet again, it's a first job skill. Don't expect much. The only thing you want to do in first job is get out of it. So realistically, just do what you can to get out of first job as fast as possible. I mean, realistically, that's the case all the way until you hit fifth job. So yeah, that's it for first job. So, after you pick up 30 suspicious looking black marbles, you get your second job. And your second job stays fairly similar between Destiny, between now and after Destiny. The only big change is that I'm pretty sure Pirate Training becomes a focused 60 strength. I could be wrong in this regard. And Scatter Shot, your main second job mobbing skill, has a consistent hitbox. And you have 7 abilities, this one being useless, so realistically only 6. Cannon Booster gives Cannoneers 2 attack speed stages for 180 seconds when you have it maxed. This is very, very important. Doesn't have a cooldown, doesn't have anything, so you want to make sure that you're using Cannon Booster as much as possible, because this will make your life so much easier. And you won't feel like a slug, so that's the one thing for sure. Mega Monkey Magic, or Normal Monkey Magic, sorry. I kind of, spoiled what's coming later on. So Monkey Magic gives 30 all stats and like some speed and some jump, which is kind of useful in the early game, and health and mana, it's totally fine. This buff does suffice and make your life in the early game much easier. Critical Fire is a passive that gives 20% critical rate and 5% critical damage. This is a very strong buff. Yeah. That's all I need to say about it. It's passive, so as soon as you level this up, you'll always have the stats. Cannon Mastery just gives you more mastery, so your range shrinks. So essentially what happens is the upper end of your range starts to meet the lower end of your range. So your damage starts to become a lot more consistent when you level this up. And Pirate Training gives you more stats. Now, I should probably change channel because there's a... So let me give an example of what Scatter Shot looks like. It's just a line straight ahead of you. So the thing is, Scatter Shot now has a fairly inconsistent hitbox. It is a line in front of you, and then once it hits the first mob, it recoils to the mobs behind it. So if there are no mobs behind the mob that it first hits, it will only hit one mob. It's not a flat, solid hitbox. And in Destiny, this does get changed to where that's actually the case. But the only issue with second job, I would say, is how inconsistent Scatter Shot actually hits. It's sometimes it'll hit 4 mobs, sometimes it'll hit 1. This is probably the worst part about this ability, but it does a decent amount of damage lines and a decent amount of damage just in general. Now, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for second job. Second job is fairly straightforward. Once we get into third and fourth job, I'll probably start doing a lot more examples and, showcasing things a little more in depth, because first and second job is mostly just passives and building the fundamentals of this class. So, let's make our way to third job, shall we? Okay, so after you pay Pedro a visit, you get your third job. Now, this is where Cannoneer really starts to ramp up, I would say. And there are a lot of abilities here and a lot of changes post-Destiny that are in this job, so I will go over them. But I will go skill by skill just so you can, go along with it. Now, Cannon Spike is going to be your main mobbing move for your third job. It does 240% damage 4 times to 6 enemies, and it looks like that. It kind of just shoots out in a line, straightforward. Now, it isn't inconsistent like Scatter Shot. It will hit anything that it comes into contact with. And what can I say? It's pretty much just a worse version of Cannon Bazooka. It's fairly straightforward. It's still pretty good though for a third job ability. Now, Monkey Fury is an active ability that does 180% damage 3 times. And whatever gets hit by Monkey Fury, that little cannonball right there, it applies a debuff to that specific enemy, which has 2 effects. So they will take 200% damage per second for 30 seconds, and they will also take 40% more damage from you. Now, this is probably one of your most important abilities because having this debuff up all the time seriously increases your damage. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's just the only issue with this ability is that the cannonball deflects off of surfaces and can sometimes bounce in really weird ways and not hit the boss. It's also server-sided, so you need to make sure that you're standing a fair bit of distance away from the boss or else it won't hit. But yeah, pretty good skill. The only change that's happening in Destiny with this skill is that its debuff duration goes from 30 seconds to 60 seconds. The next ability is Monkey Wave, and this ability is soon getting removed and replaced for Mini Cannonball. But essentially what Monkey Wave does is you hold it down, and it does 860% damage 1 time and has a 95% chance of stunning enemies, not including bosses, for 4 seconds. Now, after you charge the drum and use it at full strength, it will give you a 5% critical damage buff for 60 seconds. Now, there is also another passive where after you crit on an enemy, there is a 50% chance that you can use the fully charged drum instantly. It has a little effect tooltip, if you will. So you can easily indicate, whether you can use the drum or not. And you can tell through this little icon here. So you can see now that I'll just press the button and it'll refresh the buff. There we go. Back to 60 seconds. Now this buff cannot be improved by buff skill duration, so it will always last 60 seconds. And this buff also gives a passive 20% critical rate. In Destiny, Monkey Wave is being removed, so you won't have to micromanage this ability anymore, and its passive stats will be moved around to other abilities in this job, and I will cover it in just a second. But in the meantime, the next ability is Cannon Jump. Now, what do I say about Cannon Jump besides this is the most important ability that Cannoneer has for survivability? Essentially, it's another way to jump. So you can use it 3 times if you use Cannon Jump from the floor. But if you were to use Cannon Jump mid-air, you can only use it twice. Now, Cannon Jump is a vertical movement option that is dependent on your momentum. So if I'm moving to the right and I use Cannon Jump, I will continue to move to the right. Or if I'm moving up, then I will continue moving upwards. If I stall Cannon Jump, then it will slow me down. And I will pretty much maintain my, you stay suspended in the air is the best way to explain it. Right? And obviously this can be mixed in with other abilities. This can also be mixed in with offensive abilities. For example, if you want to flash jump, Cannon Jump, and then Cannon Spike if you want to reach a high platform in a quick amount of time. But Cannon Jump is something that you really have to practice with, and this is where the skill ceiling comes in with this class, because mastering the movement with Cannon Jump can pretty much ensure that you stay alive in almost all situations. And it's part of the reason why it's one of Cannoneer's best abilities. Far and few in between. It's only being rivaled by Buckshot, which is your hyper skill. But yeah, it's just something that you have to practice with, and this is where, you know, Cannoneer gets hard, if you will. That's it for Cannon Jump. Next we have Barrel Roulette. And I should probably say that Cannon Jump is not being changed in Destiny. It's just looking a lot better and it's going to look cleaner. Now, Barrel Roulette. Barrel Roulette is a buff that lasts for 180 seconds, and it also has a cooldown of 180 seconds. Now, this can also be affected by buff duration, and it applies one of 4 buffs. Lightning, Ice, Slow, and Skull. Each of those do different things. Lightning gives you an additional attack of 150% damage to 6 enemies every time you directly hit an enemy with abilities like Cannon Bazooka, Cannon Barrage, Cannon Spike, so on and so forth. Directly attacking abilities. Ice gives you 5% critical damage. This is the best barrel out of the 4 for doing damage by far. Next, you have Slow, which gives you a 50% chance to slow all enemies, including bosses, for 5 seconds. And the last of the 4 barrel buffs is Skull, which does 200% damage every second for 5 seconds. Now, obviously, this can be continuously reapplied if you're attacking the enemy over and over again. Now, realistically, as you'll notice with Cannoneer, there are a lot of useless abilities, and within this ability there are 2 that are useless. Lightning and Skull are awful in comparison to Ice and Slow. Now, Ice is good for when you want to just do damage, because crit damage is obviously just an insane amount of damage on top of what you already do, no matter how much percent it is. 5% doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot, I promise. And Slow is good when you want to keep bosses in place, like Lotus, Black Mage, any sort of boss that you don't want moving around often, so that surviving becomes a lot easier. Now, in this current state, the cooldown for Barrel Roulette can be halved by Nautilus Strike, and it gives a 10% final damage passive buff. You will always have 10% final damage from Barrel Roulette. And after Destiny, there are a lot of changes to Barrel Roulette. So the cooldown will become a solid 60. And if you roll any barrel that isn't ice, the cooldown will be further reduced to 30. Not only that, the passive effects will also include 20% critical rate and 5% critical damage. So basically, you take everything from Monkey Wave and slap it into Barrel Roulette. And that's Barrel Roulette for you. Next, we have Roll of the Dice, which is a buff that lasts for 180 seconds, and the cooldown is also 180 seconds. Now, there are 1 of 6 buffs that can be applied from Roll of the Dice. You know, obviously indicative of the 6 sides of a dice. Number 1 reduces the cooldown of Roll of the Dice by half. So instead of 180 seconds, the cooldown will be 90. If you roll a 2, it will increase your defense. If you roll a 3, it will increase your max HP and MP. If you roll a 4, you will get 10% crit rate. If you roll a 5, you will get 20% damage. And if you roll a 6, you will get 30% XP. Now, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are relatively useless. 1 is alright because you can reset the cooldown and try to roll for the better dice faster. But realistically, Roll of the Dice isn't that great until you get Loaded Dice, which is in 5th job, and which I'll talk about later. But just like Barrel Roulette, Roll of the Dice cooldown will be halved when you use Nautilus Strike. Now, the only change coming in Destiny is that the cooldown for Roll of the Dice will become a solid 60 seconds. making roll the dice, just like barrel roulette, a lot more of a consistent ability. And that's it for the actives and the, you know, the active buffs and active abilities. Now we have 3 passives, one being Reinforced Cannon. Reinforced Cannon increases your attack by 40 and your attack speed by 1. Now, when you hit 3rd job, I suggest that you put at least 1 point into the skill because it makes your life so much easier. Because my god, is Cannoneer clunky up to this point. When you get the +1 attack speed and use Cannon Spike, Cannoneer starts to feel a lot more smooth. Now, there is a change to Reinforced Cannon in Destiny, and it will give you an extra 5% final damage, just more stats for free. Very nice. On to Pirate Rush. Pirate Rush is just stats to make you tankier in the early game. Not necessarily useful in the end game or, you know, towards helping you do any sort of damage, and it's getting no changes in Destiny. And then last but not least, we have Counter Crush. It gives you a 20% chance of blocking an enemy attack and countering for 200% damage. Now, obviously, this ability, just like many of the others in Cannoneer's kit, is kind of useless because it doesn't block any sort of attacks from bosses. But the counter chance can still trigger on bosses when you get attacked from bosses. Now, there is a change coming to Counter Crush in Destiny, and realistically, it just adds an extra 5% final damage on top of what Reinforced Cannon gives you, so you'll have another 5% final damage over here. Yeah, that's it for 3rd job. A lot of talking, but hey, we're almost there. I should probably also mention, before I move on to 4th job, that in Destiny, Cannoneer is getting a new ability called Mini Cannonball. Now, Mini Cannonball has 2 modes, an auto and a manual mode. Both the auto and the manual mode do the same amount of damage to the same amount of mobs. It's 360% 5 times to 6 enemies. And Mini Cannonball has different hitboxes depending on which mode you use. In 3rd job, there is only manual mode, but once you get to 4th job, you will unlock auto mode. Now, you can only use Mini Cannonball once every 4 seconds, and it has an ammunition system where you can hold up to 5 Mini Cannonballs, and one recharges every 4 seconds. So you'll essentially have the maximum amount of cannonballs in 20 seconds. Now, in manual mode, you press the ability and it shoots a cannonball above you and does the amount of damage that I just said before. Now, in 3rd job, it's something that you'll have to use by itself, but when you hit 4th job, you can use it simultaneously with Cannon Bazooka, because it has no animation, no casting animation when using it along with Cannon Bazooka. Now, in auto mode, it will essentially drop onto the enemy that you are attacking, doing AoE around it for the damage that I listed before. And this AoE will only be applied when you attack an enemy with Cannon Barrage or Cannon Bazooka. And it will be obviously applied automatically. So when I hit an enemy with Cannon Barrage, Cannon Bazooka will apply, or Mini Cannonball will apply afterwards. So for example, what it will look like is I will use Cannon Barrage and Mini Bazooka will come raining down on the enemy. Now, Mini Cannonball is kind of weird in the sense that the ammunition system will be very hard to manage with your burst, so I suggest that you just try to proc Mini Cannonball as much as you can. But I personally have not tested out the ability myself. I cannot give any suggestions for it, so we'll have to see what happens with it when Destiny comes around. Yeah. I promise that's it for 3rd job. We will be moving on now. You've beat up a dragon and a griffin, and now you finally get to experience what it is like to be a master Cannoneer, the bread and butter of this class. Fourth job, and the hyper skills of this class, which I'll cover in just a bit, really make up what it means to be a Cannoneer. Now, starting off, we have Cannon Bazooka. Now, Cannon Bazooka, as I said in third job, is just a completely better version than Cannon Spike in every way, shape, and form. It has probably the longest horizontal hitbox in the game. It does 545% damage to 8 enemies 4 times. Let me get rid of decent combat orders just so you can see that. Now, the only change that this ability is getting in Destiny is that its hitbox, or its vertical hitbox, for that matter, is becoming larger, but the horizontal hitbox stays the same. So essentially, it'll be much easier to hit multiple platforms with Cannon Bazooka. This is going to be the main mobbing skill for your class, and mostly what you'll be using to clear out majority of the mobs in maps that you're going to be farming in. Next, we have your main bossing skill, Cannon Barrage. Cannon Barrage hits 4 times for 750% damage. It gives you an extra 15% crit rate, which is very nice early game, and has an extra 20% ignore enemy defense applied to it. Now, this is not a visual bonus, so will not show up in your ignore enemy defense window. Now, the only change that this ability is getting in Destiny is that its casting animation will be reduced, so you will be able to cast Cannon Barrage more often, which realistically just means more damage. And it'll also make it a lot easier for you to live when fighting bosses, because you can move around more often and not be stuck in casting animations. Next, we have Anchors Away. It is a summon that lasts for 20 seconds, and it does 460% damage every second, and when it runs out, it does 625% damage. Now, in Destiny, there are some changes to Anchors Away. The summon duration gets tripled, but the damage that Anchors Away does is reduced by 200%. So you will be dealing 260% damage at fixed intervals instead of 460% damage. Now, this is pretty good for mobbing, and sometimes it does have its use cases in, node stone scenarios and stuff like that. But realistically, the casting animation for this ability is insanely long, and I only suggest you use it if you have the time to cast it. Or open time where you can't really do damage to the boss, and you can just, throw it around, let it do its thing, kind of deal. Not entirely amazing, but it's not awful. Next, we have Monkey Militia, probably one of your best summons. It lasts for 60 seconds, and it does 295% for each monkey. In its base form, it will summon 2, but once you unlock the hyper skill, you will summon 3, and each of them do 295% at fixed intervals. This interval is around 0.4 to 0.5 seconds, and the the summon duration is 60 seconds, but it can be affected by summon duration increases like Corsair through your Legion. And this summon effectively has no cast animation, so you always want to make sure that Monkey Militia is up when you're bossing. So for example, let Monkey Militia restart. Let its cooldown come back. So I am now casting Cannon Barrage. I will press Monkey Militia, and you'll see that it'll come down. You just need to make sure that you press Cannon Barrage after you press Monkey Militia, because if you try to press them at the same time, it will stop your Cannon Barrage casting. But if you quickly, you know, use your sleight of hand, if you drink some Speed Cola, effectively there's no animation for Monkey Militia. So you want to make sure that you're pretty much keeping this up all of the time, because Monkey Militia is a good bonus to your damage per minute. In Destiny, Monkey Militia will have no changes. It's just that they will look much better and much more modernized. Next up, we have Nautilus Strike, which does 510% damage to 15 enemies 5 times. And it reduces the cooldown of Barrel Roulette and Roll of the Dice by 50%, as I said before. But in Destiny, this effect will be removed, so essentially this will only be a full map attack that will help you for mobbing. That is its only purpose in Destiny. Next up, we have Pirate Spirit. Pirate Spirit is a buff that increases your knockback resistance by 80%. This will be increased to 100% in Destiny. And Pirate Spirit also has a passive effect that increases your counterattack chance by 15% and increases your damage to bosses by 40%. So make sure you have this leveled up when you're doing bosses in the early game. It's very, very important. Next up, we have Maple Warrior. The Classic increases all of your stats by 15% for 900 seconds. No changes to this, just more drip. Hero's Will makes you immune to abnormal status effects for 3 seconds after use. So you need to make sure that you have Hero's Will up before any sort of abnormal status effects are afflicted to you. If you try to use Hero's Will as abnormal status effects are afflicted to you, it will not work. For example, if you are stunned, you will not be able to use Hero's Will. But if you use Hero's Will before you get stunned, you will not be stunned. Very good ability for endgame bosses and staying alive. Highly recommend binding this because this is very important. Next, we have Cannon Overload. It is a passive that increases your final damage by 30%, your attack speed by 1, your mastery by 70%, and your ignore enemy defense by 20%. Now, just like the third job, I suggest that you put a point into this as you progress into your fourth job. Next up, we have Mega Monkey Magic, which is a passive for Monkey Magic that increases the stats that Monkey Magic gives. So Monkey Magic will now give 1000 HP and MP, 60 all stats, 15 speed, 10 jump, and this is also applied to the whole party. And it can be stacked with other buffs, so this is just a buff to give everybody more damage. And Double Down gives you a 50% chance of rolling another dice. And for example, if you do roll 2 dice, both of those effects will be applied. So for example, because I rolled a 3 and a 1, my max HP was increased and the cooldown of roll the dice was halved. Yeah, that pretty much does it for fourth job. Shall we move on? Now it's time we get hyper. Literally. You have 3 hyper skills and passive skills to boost what your fourth job does. We'll start with the actives. The first one you unlock at level 140 is Buckshot. Now, Buckshot is a buff that lasts for 180 seconds, gives you 1 attack speed. The description here is wrong. It triples the number of attacks that your skills do, and reduces the damage for your skills by 45%. And the number of attacks for one ability cannot exceed 15. Now, in Destiny, this is going to be changed to a toggle, so you won't need to put this on a pet auto buff slot anymore, which is very, very nice. So it becomes a lot easier for Cannoneers to manage their abilities. Next up, at level 160, we have Rolling Rainbow. Rolling Rainbow does 600% damage to 10 enemies 3 times for a duration of 12 seconds. This can also be affected by summon duration, like Corsair Legion. And Rolling Rainbow ticks once every 0.5 seconds, effectively meaning that you can do 600% damage 3 times, 24 times. Rolling Rainbow is very, very strong and can help your early game mobbing a lot, especially when you get to Future Perion, because Rolling Rainbow is a continuously attacking ability, so very nice ability. And, you know, in the later stages of the game, its damage isn't too important, but it's still pretty good for doing burst damage, and still is one of your most important abilities. Next up, at level 190, we have the classic Epic Adventure that gives you 10% damage for 60 seconds, and this ability has a cooldown of 120 seconds. Now, for your passives, I will only list the passives that I suggest. The first one being Cannon Barrage, which is the extra strike. It lets your Cannon Barrage do 1 additional attack. Now, the additional attack from Cannon Barrage is also affected by Buckshot. So essentially what it does is it increases your Cannon Barrage's number of attacks to 5 and then triples it. So essentially it makes it so that your Cannon Barrage does 15 lines of damage. Then you have Critical Chance for Cannon Barrage. I don't recommend this because you want to be critting for every ability, and critting for one ability more than others is not necessarily, useful. You have Cannon Barrage Reinforced, just more damage for Cannon Barrage. Would recommend, because this is your main bossing ability, and you want your main bossing ability to do damage. Then we have Cannon Bazooka Extra Strike. So basically, it takes Cannon Bazooka, adds an extra attack, so now you do 15 attacks on Cannon Bazooka as well. And then you have Cannon Bazooka Spread. This has its uses depending on where you're mobbing, and I can only suggest this sometimes. It's not amazing because you do lose some bossing damage, but it does have its use case scenarios. Next, you have Cannon Bazooka Reinforced, which reinforces and increases the amount of damage that Cannon Bazooka does. This is useful, especially when you're trying to kill golems or multiple targets and bosses. I highly suggest that you put a point in this. And then you have Monkey Militia Enhance, which adds another Monkey Militia Bro, who does 295% damage at those specific intervals. Right? Persist increases the duration of Monkey Militia, but once again, this is not useful because replacing Monkey Militia is very easy, because they only have a cooldown of 10 seconds, and its animation is relatively non-existent. Right? So Persist, stay away from this one. This one is not useful in any case scenario, just like Critical Chance. And then you have Monkey Militia Splitter. I highly suggest that you also stay away from this one, because this is only useful if you are capping damage on Monkey Militia, which means that you will be hitting 150 billion damage, which pretty much all players in Maplestory can't even hit with their strongest abilities. So do not use Splitter, because the only thing that Splitter does is give you more lines of damage on Monkey Militia, while Enhance gives you the most damage from Monkey Militia, which is just more damage when bossing. Yeah, that's pretty much it for hyper skills. Now, the pinnacle of Cannoneer, 5th job. Take it away. 5th job, and everything that is lovely about it. I will split this in 2 segments. So first I will go over what Cannoneer's 5th job abilities do, and then the priorities for leveling up boost nodes and skill nodes and any other ability nodes that you want to hold on to. Now, if you have not seen my nodestone guide, I highly suggest that you click the bubble up there and watch that first so you know what I'm talking about and you don't get lost, because getting lost is very sad. That is the map to help guide you to what you need to do over here. But for now, I will only go over the abilities. The first and most important is the Cannon of Mass Destruction. The Cannon of Mass Destruction hits 15 enemies for 900% damage 4 times. The Cannon of Mass Destruction is also affected by buckshot, so you'll see that it does roughly around 500% damage 12 times. And it is a continuously attacking ability, so essentially, every time that the hitbox of Cannon of Mass Destruction is in contact with an enemy, it will do damage every 0.25 seconds, up to a maximum of 40 hits or 10 seconds. So in order to do the maximum damage with Cannon of Mass Destruction, it needs to hit for 10 seconds. Now, Cannon of Mass Destruction, like Mini Cannonball, has an ammunition system. You get 1 Cannon of Mass Destruction every 25 seconds, and you can hold up to 3 at a time. Now, the cooldown between each Cannon of Mass Destruction in terms of how you throw them out is 3 seconds. So I have to wait 3 seconds before I throw out the next Cannon of Mass Destruction. Now, there are changes being made to this ability in Destiny, where if you right-click this ability, there is a slow mode that can be activated with this ability. Essentially what it does is, when this Cannon of Mass Destruction is in contact with an enemy, its speed will be halved. Essentially meaning that you can reach the maximum amount of damage a lot more consistently. Another change with Cannon of Mass Destruction is if you were to hold the down arrow key and press the key that Cannon of Mass Destruction is on, you will be able to throw out all 3 cannons simultaneously. Now, the reason why this is very nice is because it saves you the animation for 2 other Cannons of Mass Destructions, and it also makes your burst window a lot smaller, meaning that you can use Ring of Restraint 4 and Angelic Buster Link and get all of your damage squeezed into that window. Cannon of Mass Destruction is pretty much all of the damage for this class. This ability is very, very important. Next up, we have the Nuclear option. Now, the Nuclear option essentially gives you 5 seconds to aim your nuke, so you can point it up or down. And when you shoot the nuke, you get an iframe or an invincibility frame for 1.8 seconds. And once the nuke hits the floor, it does an explosion that inflicts 1,760% damage 5 times to 15 enemies for 1 second. This window for damage, or every time that the Nuclear option ticks, is roughly 0.1 seconds to 0.25 seconds. I'm not too sure on this one, but it does tick fairly often for when you throw it out. Now, the Nuclear option is also affected by buckshot, so you'll see that the Nuclear option does 15 lines of around 900%. And after you shoot out the Nuclear option, it creates a polluted field that lasts for 15 seconds on the lowest platform that it can apply to, which inflicts 1,100% damage up to 10 enemies 3 times. No. It does 1,100% damage to 10 enemies, but this is also affected by buckshot. So the lines get tripled, the damage gets nearly halved. Now, one more thing about Nuclear option, and it doesn't say in the ability description. When you press Nuclear option, you will also get an iframe for 1 second, indicated by the the buff icon over here. And then when you release the nuclear option, you will get another iframe or invincibility frame for 1.8 seconds. Now, the nuclear option is a lot of damage, and it is highly suggested that you try to use it as much as possible. But this is the only invincibility frame in this class, and it should be used primarily to keep yourself safe. The nuclear option is also a good mobbing tool because of the patch that it leaves behind. It is essentially the range of your monkey militia, but in the sense of a radioactive field. The nuclear option does have a lot of use cases, so leveling this up just like just like Cannon of Mass Destruction is fairly important. You can also cheese the nuclear option by holding it to choose when you want to have your second iframe come out. So, for example, if you want to iframe instantly, you press the button, and if you want to iframe something shortly afterwards, you can hold it and then let go, and you'll have another 1.8 seconds of invincibility. Yet again, use cases for the nuclear option depends, and you will need to practice and see how this ability works and how to best use this ability to keep yourself from dying. Next up, we have Poolmaker. Poolmaker is an ability that strikes 8 enemies, for 1,540% damage 3 times. This is affected by buckshot, once again, like always. So it does 9 lines of damage. And when you pop Poolmaker, you can only pop... There will only be 20 instances of Poolmaker damage. Now, there are 2 effects for Poolmaker. When you pop Poolmaker, if there are no enemies in range, a stack of Poolmaker will be consumed to drop a package that you can pick up, and it will give you a buff that gives you 20% damage for 20 seconds and heal you for... what's the number? For 20% of your max HP. There can only be 2 max of these packages on screen at a time. And if the packages hit their cap, then Poolmaker will hit whatever it can on the screen, or the Poolmaker stacks will be wasted. They will hit nothing. And every time Poolmaker attacks or drops a package, 1 stack will be consumed. So for example, let's go to a random map that nobody is in, hopefully. Thank you. And let's wait for the cooldown of Poolmaker to come back up. So when I use Poolmaker, 1 stack will be consumed every time it attacks. Every time it attacks an enemy, 13, and when it drops a supply. Now when there are the max supplies, it just decides to attack, and it consumes a stack. And that's when you hit the diminishing returns for Poolmaker. Now, the location in which Poolmaker hits and what Poolmaker does is random, so realistically you'll have no option in terms of what Poolmaker does. That is the biggest downside to this ability, but Poolmaker is fairly consistent for giving you damage whether the boss is there or not. Try to pop Poolmaker as much as you can. It's a very, very useful ability, not only for you, but for your team as well. And now, the last ability is called Monkey Business. And Monkey Business summons a platoon of champion monkeys for 45 seconds. And these champion monkeys can use 2 abilities. Either Monkey Cannon or Monkey Bomb. Monkey Cannon hits 3 enemies for 660% damage 4 times, and this is not affected by buckshot. Monkey Bomb hits 12 enemies for 990% damage 7 times, and also ignores 100% of monster defense. And there are 3 champion monkeys that spawn. There is Basic Roy, Speedy Maxi, and Explosive Khaki. Basic Roy uses a monkey cannon every 1 second and a monkey bomb every 6 seconds. Speedy Maxi uses a cannon every 0.7 seconds and a bomb every 30 seconds. And then Explosive Khaki uses a monkey cannon every 2.5 seconds and a monkey bomb every 3 seconds. Now, realistically, the timings for each of the monkeys is realistically insignificant. But it is listed here if you do want to see what each monkey does. Now, Monkey Business is just generally a good ability and gives you more damage, whether it's for bossing or more mobbing capabilities. But yeah, that pretty much does it for your 5th job abilities. And then, in terms of how you want to level up your abilities, you have priorities for your boost nodes and priorities for your 5th job skills. Now, you have 2 trios for Cannoneer or 4 boost nodes. The first one being Cannon Barrage, Cannon Bazooka, and Rolling Rainbow. And the other being Nautilus Strike, Monkey Militia, and Monkey Fury. Now, Nautilus Strike is not necessary. Realistically, you only need Monkey Militia and Monkey Fury for this tri-node, but Nautilus Strike does help when mobbing and when bossing. It is some extra damage. Alternatively, you can use Anchors Away if you don't want to use Nautilus Strike, because Anchors Away does produce similar amounts of damage, but you need to make sure that your uptime on Anchors Away is more than what it usually is. That's it for the boost nodes. For the actual 5th job skills, between the 4 of them, Cannon of Mass Destruction takes the highest priority of the 4. I suggest that you level this up with all of the node shards that you have, because this helps you mob a lot better in the early game and helps you do so much more damage against bosses in the late and end game. Now, between the other 3 skills, for me, I personally think that it's equal priority. Do whatever you feel is best, but if I were to pick one, first I would do Monkey Business, so that your mobbing is a lot more consistent with them. Then the Nuclear option, so that your field can one-shot as you drop it. And then Poolmaker. I would say that Poolmaker takes the lowest priority, because Poolmaker not only does the least amount of damage, but the buff is stagnant or consistent, depending on what level it is. So realistically, you don't need to level this one up, but eventually you will need to make sure that it is level 30. Now, in terms of general abilities, the first one that I suggest after you have all 4 of your 5th job skills and all 4 of your boost nodes is Loaded Dice. Loaded Dice is broken because essentially it lets you choose a 3rd dice and lets you roll a 3rd dice for roll of the dice. So you can choose to either roll a 5 or a 6 depending on what you're doing. You roll a 5 when you're bossing and you roll a 6 when you're farming mobs for more XP. Straightforward, and it also gives you a passive 40 attack when you have it max. Just absolutely amazing. You can't really go wrong with it. The next ability that I suggest as a Cannoneer is Decent Speed Infusion. Decent Speed Infusion, more attack speed. What else can I say? Attack speed is absolutely critical for making Cannoneer the best that it can be. It gives you 1 attack speed stage for 255 seconds with a cooldown of 180 seconds, and it passively gives you 5 all stats, realistically insignificant. The attack speed is what you want from this ability. Now, after this, it all depends on what you're doing, or what potentials you have, so on, so forth. So if you have any questions about what abilities to use afterwards, I will stream every day that I can at 6 p.m. Eastern, and if you do want to ask about how you should be assembling and configuring your nodes, I go live at twitch.tv/acat3. But my first pick for what to do afterwards is to use Pirate's Banner. Pirate's Banner is really good for bossing. It essentially increases your stats by 25% and then reduces the defense of the boss by 25%. This also applies to the whole party, so every single party member can get 25% stat, and reduces the boss's defense by 25%. This seriously boosts party damage, and I highly, highly, highly suggest it. But after that, it's more of just situational and how you go along. I could also suggest a will skill for when you get there, but that's for when you get there and when you have the space. Yet again, please check out my stream. I could probably answer all of your questions there depending on your gear, your level, and anything in between. But that pretty much does it for the V Matrix. I will now cover inner ability. Inner ability is fairly straightforward for Cannoneer because attack speed is super important for Cannoneer. So your first line is always going to be attack speed plus 1 level. This is very important that you try to get attack speed plus 1 level because this actually allows you to hit the cap on attack speed. Essentially, how it breaks down is that from your passives, you will go from 6 to 8 from your 3rd and 4th job skills. Your hyper ability, Buckshot, will bring you to 5. Booster will bring you to 3. Your inner ability will bring you to 2. The green potion from Monster Park will bring you to 1. And decent speed infusion will bring you to 0. Now, the reason why you always want to be capping on attack speed is so that mobbing not only becomes a lot more consistent because you're attacking a lot faster and moving a lot faster, but also so that you're just dishing out more damage more often. Hence why attack speed is also good. It also affects the rate at which you could use blast back and cannon jump. So for example, if I were to use cannon jump and I try to stall in the air and then try to push myself up afterwards, I can't really do it because of my attack speed. But if I were to boost my attack speed, you'll see how much more lift I can get. I pretty much can hit the ceiling again just because of the extra attack speed that I got. Attack speed also allows you to use blast back a lot more often as a movement option, and allows you to realistically shift your position more often than normal. So highly suggest attack speed for the first line. In terms of the second and the third, there are multiple lines that are good. Damage to enemies afflicted with abnormal status is one line that's good. Boss damage is good. Crit rate is good. Mesos is good. Mesos obtained is good. Item drop rate is good. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Attack is also usable, but the thing about attack is that it gets outclassed by things like crit rate, because when you have crit rate, for example, you can save slots on your Legion board that will help you achieve a lot more stats overall. Or if you want to use extra link skills and you want to save the slots over here, having the extra crit rate will help you do that as well. Yeah, that pretty much does it for leveling 5th job skill nodes and the inner ability. Let's get on to the next segment, shall we? Now, the last important topic that I have is the WSE, or Weapon, Secondary, and Emblem Potentials. Now, in Reboot and even regular server Maplestory as well, the weapons, secondary, and emblem potentials are critical for how much damage you do in the late to end game. Now, because Cannoneer is a class that has a ridiculous amount of attack power scaling, you need to make sure that you have a crazy high amount of attack lines. So personally, I suggest the best potentials for Cannoneer is to get 3 lines of attack on the weapon, 3 lines of attack on the secondary, and 3 lines of attack on the emblem. Fairly straightforward. Try to get as many attack lines as possible because attack lines are very, very important for Cannoneer to give them the, just the highest amount of damage possible. Not only that, because you have things like Pirate Spirit and Cannon Overload, your base amount of boss damage and IED are higher than usual, so that's why you can afford to get extra lines, extra attack lines on your weapon, secondary, and emblem. Now, if you can't get 9 lines of attack, grabbing a line of Ignore Enemy Defense or a line of boss damage, so 7 lines of attack, 1 line of IED, and 1 line of boss, or 8 lines of attack, 0 lines of boss, 1 line of IED, or 8 lines of attack, 1 line of boss, and 0 lines of IED is also acceptable. But you need to make sure that if you are running those specific configurations, that you compensate somehow through familiars or other means like Legion, Link skills, or or other ways, other methods, I guess you could say, of getting boss damage or Ignore Enemy Defense or so on, so forth. But that pretty much does it for everything. That pretty much does everything. That's all you need to know about Cannoneer. I will do some showcases on how to mob with this class and how to boss with this class, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like in the end game. So I will go to End of the World 2-4, for example. And essentially, this is what Cannoneer mobbing is going to look like. So you pop all of your buffs. And in a map like this, I want to make sure that this platform is covered by my Monkey Militia. And I drop. And my Cannon Bazooka can clear the bottom 2 platforms. But the issue is that Cannon Bazooka can't reach the edge over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Cannon of Mass Destruction to cover that edge over there. And then I'm going to use Cannon Jump to clear the top right and bottom right platforms respectively. Now, essentially, all you need to know for Cannoneer, or the gist for Cannoneer mobbing, is to make sure that you are rotating between Monkey Business and Cannon of Mass Destruction. Because when rotating between these 2 abilities, you can ensure that your kill count is maintained at a high speed within all points of the rotation. Because if you use Cannon of Mass Destruction and Monkey Business at the same time, then you will run out of Cannons of Mass Destruction, which means that you won't be able to clear some portions of the map. So make sure to use your cannons scarcely. But I can also use Rolling Rainbow to clear that same portion of the map that Cannon of Mass Destruction does, and then replace Monkey Militia as it's going to run out mid-rotation before the mobs spawn once again, and then I return to my original place and continue my rotation with Cannon of Mass Destruction. Now, Pool Maker can also be used in this map because it can be used to clear the top right platforms. Because generally, if you keep the bottom left cleared with Cannons of Mass Destruction, you can essentially get Pool Maker to choose the top right enemies to target. There you go. So now that portion of the map is cleared. Replace my monkeys. Go back down. Restart my position. Kill all the mobs. Rinse and repeat. That's essentially what a rotation for Cannoneer would look like in pretty much all endgame maps. Obviously, depending on what map you're in, the position of specific abilities will change. But yeah, the gist of Cannoneer mobbing: rotate between Cannon of Mass Destruction, Monkey Business, and Rolling Rainbow, Pool Maker. Just make sure that they're covering parts of the map. You want to make sure that you're not using all of your abilities together. Now, bossing on the other hand is completely opposite, like it always is. you want to make sure that all of your abilities can be fit within the same burst window, or fit within, while you have all of your buffs active. So I will cover what that burst window looks like now. Let me just make my way to Dojo. 3 seconds later. So the typical burst rotation from a Cannoneer looks like this. So obviously you want the lowest buffing abilities with the longest duration to pop first, and move into the abilities that give you more damage with a shorter duration last, so that you have the most time with those abilities that last the least, so you're not wasting time popping other buffs or, getting things in the way. So a typical rotation would be Epic Adventure, then Maple World Goddess Blessing, and then Pirate's Flag, and then the nuclear option. No, wait, sorry. Epic Adventure, Maple World's Goddess Blessing, then Monkey Business, then Pirate's Flag, then Nuclear Option, and as the Nuclear Option is coming out, you want to make sure that you press Overdrive straight afterwards, then the True Arachnid Reflection or Will Skill, and then Poolmaker, Rolling Rainbow, and then Cannon of Mass Destruction. Get them all out. This is also making the assumption that all of your deployables and buffs are active, which includes Monkey Fury, Monkey Wave, Monkey Militia, and the Anchor. So let me give a quick demonstration of what it looks like. And it continues just like that. And you want to make sure that you're throwing out as many Cannon of Mass Destructions as possible in that small time frame. Notice how all of my abilities have pretty much exited, left the scene, are on cooldown, while I still have Overdrive and Pirate Flag, probably the two buffs that give me the most amount of damage while this window is up. Now, for continuous damage, you want to make sure that Pirate Flag continues to stay up, and you use Nuclear Option and Cannon of Mass Destruction as much as you can, because that helps you do more and more damage as you go along. Now, this is also making the assumption that you don't have Terms of Conditions and Ring of Restraint 4. If you have Terms of Conditions and Ring of Restraint 4, you want to make sure that you pop Flag, then Overdrive, then Terms of Conditions, then Nuclear Option, and then Ring of Restraint 4. Because you want to make sure that Nuclear Option is coming out and touching the floor as soon as your last buff is about to come out. So just give me a minute for the cooldowns to reset, and I'll demonstrate what it looks like with terms and conditions. Okay, so my buffs are just coming back from their cooldowns. And I will show what a burst rotation looks like with terms and conditions. Making the assumption that everything else is active, we go like this. Epic Adventure, Maple World Goddess, Monkey Business, Flag, Overdrive, Nuke, Terms and Conditions, True Arachnid Reflection, Poolmaker, Rolling Rainbow. So it will look like this. Making sure all that's up. And that's what it looks like. And then you just continue to cannon barrage as you go along. Notice how all of my abilities are on cooldown, all within almost the terms and conditions window, and within the overdrive window. All of my damage has come out, and I have probably beat this thing into submission. It probably won't tell me how much damage I've done because I haven't run a battle analysis. But yeah, that's what the burst window looks like. And I will do one more showcase of survivability and movement options in a boss like Lotus. Now, one thing to note is that if you do have a lot of space, using Blink is another good option for this class because it can help you stall in the air even longer. Considering that cannon jump can already help you stall in the air for around 1 to 2 seconds, blink can give you another 3 whole seconds in the air. So, and usually that's good because you don't want to be touching the floor, especially in bosses like Lotus and sometimes even Lucid. So I'll show what that looks like. So I will show what bossing typically looks like on Cannoneer. You'll notice that a lot of the time I'll be in the air and I'll be moving to the left and the right of the boss depending on where my cannons of mass destruction are going, because I want to ensure that these are doing the maximum amount of damage that they can. So for most bosses, you usually want to start with your burst rotation. So I'll start by throwing the long lasting abilities out, and then I'll enter. Apply the debuffs to the boss, apply the buffs to myself. Throw out a cannon of mass destruction, maybe. Throw out a nuclear option. Use the iframe to cross the laser so that there's no risk. And now we're into the second phase. So this is typically how I would run it. Then I will pop my strong burst abilities like Overdrive and Pirate's Flag once we get into the second phase. So I'll pop them here. So the reason why I'm not afraid to pop my abilities there is because I know Lotus is going to walk into me. And notice how I'm using Blast Back and Cannon Jump together while maintaining my momentum to stay away from the most debris that I can. Granted, it's not perfect, but it will do the job a lot of the time. And I will also use Cannon Jump to stay away from Lotus. I also messed up because I got stunned before I could throw my iframe out, but the idea was there. I definitely could have lived that situation if I throw out my iframe first, or granted if I just acted a little faster. Oh, that's bad. Alright, use my iframe because I'm in a dangerous spot. Get on the platforms, blast back, cannon jump. Alright, my burst rotation is coming again soon. So we'll start setting up. Use blast back and cannon jump together to not only avoid the debris, but avoid Lotus because I know that he's going to, use his attack soon to try to push me into whatever's coming. But notice how because I use my iframe there, I won't have it for my burst, but I still need to get my burst rotation out or else I will be wasting damage. So even though I don't have the nuclear option, I'm gonna throw it out because I need the damage anyways. And there I'm dead because that's just unlucky. There's nothing I can do there. That's kind of there's platforms all over my head and I have no iframe kind of deal. That's the thing with Lotus is sometimes you can get unlucky, but most of the time it is, discrepancy in skill that gets you killed. The same thing here. I have to iframe that or else I'm pretty much dead. And then use cannon jump to move around. I guess I got a follow notification mid-recording session. Yeah, okay, I guess we'll keep that in the video. And then, continue to do whatever I'm doing. Make sure that the debuffs and the buffs are always applied. Just do damage here, get him to the third phase. Rebuff as I have time to do nothing. And burst rotation is going to be back up in 40 seconds. Now, burst rotation is always going to be dependent of monkey business. So you need to make sure that you're looking at the monkey business timer. Or cooldown timer, I should say. Now, I'm also going to try to roll Snail to showcase that and showcase how it slows bosses and makes Lotus a lot easier, especially. For right now, we'll continue as normal. Holy. Okay, well, yeah, I could have lived that. I just needed to pop my iframe. The thing is, I'm trying to flex and I'm trying to be cool, but it's not working out. But it seems like we're right about rounding up to our burst rotation, so I'll start popping the abilities after this. So we'll start popping now. Okay, seems like I have to pop the iframe for survivability right there. Once again. So the nuclear option will not follow the rotation. Now I have to get out of that situation fast, so I use cannon jump to stall myself in the air and to get out of that corner so that I don't get hit by the lasers or the trucks that are over me. There is one platform in the middle. I've accidentally pressed cannon jump. Iframe for survivability. And there we go. We stall that one out. So realistically, if I had blink there, that I could just stall in the air rather than trying to run to the platform. Keep myself cornered here. Seems like we still have not run into Snail yet. Still trying to make that happen. There is a truck over me, so I've got to iframe that. Note that the trucks are a one-shot, so I cannot get hit by them or I will literally die. Like, and I mean that literally, I will die. Burst rotation up in 12 seconds. Keep myself away from the sun. Potion after I tank the sun. Okay, monkey business is up, so now we throw our burst rotation. Just to make sure that I'm staying alive in the process. Now note that the nuclear option was up for this rotation, so I used it for damage. For the memes, which realistically I shouldn't have, because now I might die for it. But we're fine, we lived. And continue to rotate like this, if I can actually be smart and not die. Okay, just hug the corner. Just give it a nice old hug. Still rolling lightning. Okay, unlucky. Okay, still alive. Make sure that everything is still continued to be applied. Continue to do damage. 20 seconds until the next burst rotation. So I will just throw out Cannon Barrage. Fairly simple. Now, my buffs, my default buffs are not up, so I need to reapply those. Because Cannon Booster is insanely important towards keeping me alive and doing more damage. I need to invincibility frame that, because eating that... Oh, whoa, that's a situation. Okay. Just hug the corner here a little more. Okay, get out. That's a lot of debris on top of my head. Next burst rotation is up. Let Lotus teleport here. And then... I do not have the nuclear option. I will wait for it. And then I will pop the rest of my burst. And then try to lure Lotus into the bullet bills. Notice how he's moving faster than the bullets, so I can squeeze out the maximum amount of damage. And he teleported into it. I rolled ice. Still no snail. This is kind of unfortunate. Go ahead, Lotus. But notice how I can infinitely stall around the debris, given that I just move correctly. And that I can infinitely stall him around. Unless if I get really, really unlucky. Wow, that was a bad, bad, bad voice crack. Okay, we can just stay in the corner here. He's going to teleport. You can tell that Lotus is going to teleport if he stands still like that. Yeah. Notice how I keep myself suspended in the air and then I use Blastback to recoil backwards into the majority of the platforms. Whoa, 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 whoa. What happened there? That was weird. Next burst rotation up in 10 seconds. That's a lot of platforms. I will use cannon jump to jump over the robots. I am alive. That was totally calculated and totally not a mistake. So we'll just pop our burst rotation and pretend like nothing happened. And then I'm going to pretend like that blast back also wasn't a mistake. I'm somehow still alive after making a multitude of mistakes there. I just ran right into that. Okay, so then we just wait this out. And then because I have some extra bullets left over because I was trying to fight for my life right there, we'll just pop one right there. Because notice how Monkey Business is still on a minute cooldown. I'll pop another. Because I also want to try pushing damage so that I can get him down in the next burst. Okay. Stall in the air just so there's no risk. Play this safe. No need to take any risks in terms of damage. Okay, stand in the spot that I'm staying in. Once again, taking no risks, just playing this fairly simply. Use blast back there to move myself out a lot faster than what I usually would. Notice how if I didn't use blast back there, I would have died. I could have also just flash jumped. Flash jumping also works. Well, flash jumping has its repercussions because if I go too far, then I might knock myself into another debris that I might not want to run into. Oh my, I have not rolled snail, but I promise you guys, snail is very, very useful. Not only that, next burst rotation is up, so I'll pop all that. That's kind of unlucky. He went into purple as I pop my rotation. But notice how I pick up the pool maker boxes by pressing the up arrow key. Now we just push for damage. Try to do as much as we can because he's right on 1 health. Maybe we can take him out right here. And I forgot to potion, so I died out. But essentially, that's what it looks like. And yeah, that'll be it. That is my guide on how to Cannoneer, in essence. Lot of monkeys, not very much damage. That's a meme, by the way. A lot of things are getting changed in Destiny that help us out a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and sub, or I will literally delete your mesos off of the face of the earth faster than Star Forcing does. Thank you. Much appreciated.